Hello guys. So yesterday I put up a video and said that I will not do another one for another month because I'm traveling and just finding it too difficult to do off my laptop. But I was talking to a developer this morning about an idea to use with advanced themers ATF, and I thought I'd just share it with you because it was something that I thought was actually very useful and not something I'd considered before. And that is to do with the automatic application of spacing and radius and things like that. And then how can you specifically tell a element to not use those automatic settings? And in ATF, there are already a few automatic settings. So if we have a look at this block here, we look at the section. Let's go up to the section first. We'll look at that section and we will see in our section here, we have row gap. And that row gap comes from this variable of AT container gap, which is in our theme settings. So that automatically gets applied unless you override that gap. In the container, same deal. We've got a row gap of AT content gap. I'll show you where those are set. And then in our block, we also have AT content gap here, which is what gives us you can see in the purple between the blocks of content there, you can see the gap there. Now on the block, we set it on the row and the column so that if you do a grid, you don't need to set the gap, automatically has a content gap, a grid gap of your content gap, which you can set up in your theme. So let's see where that is in the actual build. If we go into the theme settings and we've got ATF installed, you go into your elements, have a look at our section, you see your row gap has our container gap. And then if we have a look at the container, we can see our row gap has the content gap. And then if we look at the block has both the content gap for both the column gap and the row gap. So this is where we'd add a grid, and it automatically has those settings in that if we use a bricks block. So that's the idea of it. It's very, very simple. At this stage, you can override these. You can set those to whatever you want, or you can get rid of them if you don't want automatic spacing at all, anywhere on any of your sections, containers, and blocks. Just remove it from here. That's the easiest way to do it. However, I like having it there as my consistent spacing, but there are times where you want to override it. So for example, here we've got a header block. Inside that header block, we've got a heading and some basic text. Typical sort of thing. That basic text might be a accent, which you might put before the heading, after the heading. We don't want that gap between the heading and the text. We could simply go into the row gap here and just set that to 0. That's one way of doing it. And we might actually have some other things that we're applying automatically here as well. We're not at the moment, but there may be a time where you have other things automatically applying to this block that you want to undo. Now, the other thing we might have is on these images, for example, we might decide we're going to have our standard is that we have a radius on the borders of all images on the site, but we then have a image that's sitting inside of a block that we don't want rounded. We need to be able to remove that rounding. So this is all what I just call automatic settings. Okay, so I thought about well, what I've normally seen is either overriding at the element level or creating a utility for each type of setting to say no borders, no spacing, no gap, whatever. But I thought it made more sense that if you don't want the automatic settings, just have a single utility class which says no auto. And no auto would be your settings, your radius, your borders, whatever. I don't want anything automatic on this, just simple utility. So I'm going to create that utility class. Now I'm just going to call it no auto. And that's just a blank utility class. Now we have to decide where to do that. I'll just put that on that header. Okay. Now there's a couple of places we can do that. One is we can just use that in the bricks utils itself. So in here, we go into our CSS and we can set up our no auto there. And that's quite a legitimate place to do it. We can also do it in the scene styles in the style sheet. We can put it in there. And because we've got AT, we can also put that into the advanced CSS. So there's all these different places we can put it. My preference is to use the bricks editor, because we've got to put the class on it anyway. Why not just use Bricks global class to do that? So in there, I'm just going to use root block, and I'm going to say, actually, we want to override the variable too, by the way. So we're going to set our AT -AT container gap to 0, and we're going to set our AT content gap to 0. You can see we've got no spacing there because that block is using our content gap. Now, the reason I'm overriding the variable is because there's a rule applied to this that uses that variable. So we don't have to worry about specificity because this rule doesn't have to be more specific than the rule that was applying the gap, because we're just telling it to override the variable that rule uses, if that makes sense. So we don't worry about specificity by overriding the variable that it actually uses. So that makes sense to me to do that, all right? So what we're saying is that we've got no auto. We want a container gap of 0, a content gap of 0. All right. Now let's look at the, sorry, I got a loud motorbike going past me there. Now let's look at a auto spacing auto radius for our images. So this is where you're going to want to put your CSS somewhere global. So you're either going to use the AT advanced CSS, or you're going to use the theme settings, theme styles, style sheet. Whatever you decide to use is up to you, or you can use an external code manager. I would say now that Bricks has this and you've got AT anyway, either one of these would be probably the right place for me. Given that this is a theme setting, and on this theme, we're going to set our style of it. It probably makes sense to put this into this theme. So I'm going to do it there. So I'm going to set the image, and I'm going to just do a border radius. Oops. I keep forgetting that this doesn't have all the nice features of the superpower CSS. And I go to use the type head, which doesn't exist. Even there, I can't bring up variables, so I have to use this variable picker, which is the Bricks one, radius, and let's use the radius M on there. And now our image over here has a border radius. Okay, pretty simple. We'll just hold all images to have a border radius. Now, what if we go to the image, and on that image, why aren't you selecting there? Come on, Bricks, do the right thing. We do no auto. All right. Nothing happened. It still has the border radius on it. So let's go back to our theme. Settings or theme styles, our style sheet. And what we have to say is that image, if it is not .no auto. Okay. So it doesn't have the no auto, and this does not update in real time. So let's just save that and refresh. In fact, as I look at this, I would say use the AT advanced CSS, because this isn't up to scratch as far as I'm concerned. Good to have. If you don't have AT, but if you've got AT, then you've already got somewhere decent to do it. Okay, that didn't work. Why did that not work? Let's have a look at that image. It's because I've got a figure on it. So let's take the figure off. So that works now. So when I've got the no auto on it, I don't get my radius. If I take the no auto off there, I get my radius. Okay, so no auto is getting rid of our spacing on this block over here, and it's getting rid of our radius on that there. Now that is actually another thing I was going to show you. Actually, if I put my no auto back on there, and I make that a figure, okay, I now have no auto on there, but it's applying the radius. It's applying the radius even though I've got no auto on there. Why is that? Let's actually have a look at the image. So where it puts the no auto when we set it to a figure is actually on the figure, not on the image. So we have to do a overflow clip and put the radius on here, which is not what we want to do. We want to target that image. So the way we're going to do that is in the settings up here, go to theme settings, back to our style sheet. We're going to enhance our rule to say not not dot no auto followed by a image. So we say only if the parent of our image doesn't have no auto on it and our image does not have no auto on it, then we're going to set the border radius. Okay, so now it works on whether it's that's on a figure. We take it back to that, go back to the figure here, then take that figure off. So it's back to being an image. And our no auto works on that. If we want it to inherit the defaults, we take the no auto off. And then we have that didn't save properly. Okay, there we go. And then we've got the auto radius on there. So I think it's really cool. So really, if you look at the DOM here, we've got a block here. To get rid of the auto spacing, we've just added no auto to it. We've got an image here, which I think is just an image at the moment. To get rid of the spacing, we've just added, is it in there? We can see it. Where's our classes? No, we don't have the no auto on there, sorry. If we wanted to get rid of it on that image, we just add no auto. Okay, and now we have our CSS classes. We've got no auto there now, so that doesn't apply the automatic radius on there. So just a thought, I just think it's a really simple way where if we apply all of our automatic rules in that way, we can simply override them by adding a single utility class. Say, I'll style this manually. I don't want any of your automatic stuff on there. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully that makes sense and is useful for you. Thank you.